Monday, Tuesday, happy days.
Wednesday, Thursday, happy days.
Friday, Saturday, happy days.
28 days later.
That and so much more coming on the season finale of the Deadlights Podcast. Woo!
The devil's eyes. We all go a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I'll play a game.
Want it? Kill 'em all. Want it?
You look so little mine. 5 dead lives.
Welcome to the Deadlights Podcast. I'm your host, Sam.
And I'm your host, Matt, bringing you yet another in the final of Season 5 deep dive into some tremendous horror.
If you haven't already, like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, please.
Comment, bring the comments to us. We're at the end here. We want to hear what you liked, what you disliked, and if you're going to carry forward with us.
Wow, we made it to the season finale.
Incredible, dude.
That's crazy. Over 12 episodes, 12 movies that we got to deep dive into. Man, it's wild looking back.
It is, and taking the time to perfect the beats because we still got love for the streets. It's just like, you know, I love the style you and Leslie had cultivated and went before, and real just like kind of run and gun, watch the movie, dive right into review. I did the one as I was a guest with you guys on a season or so back, and to, you know, kind of elaborate things out a little bit more and to take the time to kind of sink into them has been rather delicious and very enjoyable with you, my friend. I've had a heck of a time. Hope you guys have too, and very excited for much more to come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This season, I want to thank those who joined us because, you know, we're trying to figure this thing out between us, what we like to do. And I think we kind of came to a place of really diving into these movies from the behind the scenes aspect, trying to figure out the story of how these movies got made, really from conception all the way through release. Sometimes we even talked about, and really just finding, at least for us, more of our appreciation for these films that we knew we loved already. And then we just got to learn so much more about what went into making those movies. And for the most part, it was people's love for films that went into making those movies, which is just so fun to talk about and dive into.
Being able to celebrate these films and the triumphs that everybody has gone through to make them and everything, it's been awesome. I've been having so much fun.
It's great. It's great. And you know what? Let's jump into the last one
With
of the season.
Big banger.
Big banger. This week we went to 28 weeks later.
28 days later.
Oh, Jesus.
Run it back.
Okay, run it back. 28 days later, ... Directed by Danny Boyle. Written by Alex Garland. 4 weeks after a mysterious, incurable virus spreads throughout the United Kingdom, a handful of survivors try to find sanctuary. I think, as you once said, pretty simple dimples.
Yeah, simple dimples here. That is, and like when you can set that kind of the bare bones around it as simple dimples. You open yourself to a lot of unknown. And sometimes, you know, it's like, don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't look at this as like so open-ended, like still kind of like scale things down and bring in texture and what have you to the world. But they do such a tremendous job through so many little elements of storytelling and pacing, and again on a small budget and utilizing what they had that could be seen as weaknesses to their strengths. And like the way we've been able to dive in and really truly see how that fleshed out was remarkable.
And it's really at the beginning when this came out, 2002, I believe. This was the beginning of that zombie genre explosion. You know, we had like 10 years there where there was just zombie movies coming out all the time. This was right at the beginning of it.
Yeah, we had to quiet it down. Zombies were big for a while, and yeah, this kind of was the resurrection.
You see so many movies after this take influence from this movie. And so it's kind of undeniable how effective this movie is. That's why I put it in there. As far as zombie movies go, it's got to be one of my favorite ones. It is a great horror movie in the fact of it's very scary, but it also does so much of commenting on society, making you feel things, making you relate to not only the humans, but the monsters too at some points. It just does a lot with, like you said, seemingly little that they had to work with. Shall we get into the can?
Yes, we shall.
Let's open it up for the last time in the season. The can, the filmmaking. And as always, or as in more recent times, I've liked to start with the filmmaker, kind of give a backstory of where they are in their career. And we're going to start with the director, Danny Boyle. And he actually came from a very Catholic family and was considering going into the priesthood until a priest actually convinced him not to go into the priesthood. But then he ended up going to college for drama, ended up doing a lot of directing of plays there, which naturally kind of brought him into directing more professional theaters. The Royal Shakespeare Theatre was a big theater that he directed at. That eventually brought him to producing for the BBC network. So that's when he kind of got his first foot into film, which was actually TV. At that same time, he was getting more and more interested in filmmaking. He came from a very theater background, but I think it was in the late 70s he saw Apocalypse Now, and that is what really just like made him fascinated with film.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
I believe his first film was a film called Shallow Grave, and that came out in 95 and was the highest grossing film, British film, of that year.
Go ahead then, telephone the police. Tell them there's a suitcase full of money and you don't want it.
And it was kind of that allowed him to do Trainspotting.
What's on the menu this evening, sir?
That's definitely what allowed him to, his film career to kind of blossom. And then that's when he did an adaptation of The Beach, which was a book written by Alex Garland, his first introduction with Alex Garland. And I think it was while they were working on that project together that Alex Garland proposed this idea of a zombie film.
This idea that there's a psychological virus causes this apocalypse. You know, we've all seen movies about biological viruses being released and causing mayhem and stuff like this. But the idea, and that it was linked to rage or this social intolerance that is everywhere now, appears to be everywhere, certainly in this country, certainly in Britain. And that somehow that this might escape and run rampant across the country and create these monsters that just kill people, and that the monsters are us, really.
Took a lot of, obviously, inspiration from Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead. There was a book in particular that he took a lot of inspiration from, The Day of the Triphoids. But he said actually it wasn't until he played the video game Resident Evil that he really sparked his interest in zombie movies again, reignited it.
But then playing Resident Evil, there was something he picked up on while playing that game. It was just zombies are they're too slow, and there's not enough thrill and fear, and all the zombie films from before is these lethargic, brain dead, supernatural felt state. And what really kind of wrapped his mind around this rage kind of state and everything were the dogs. There was these dogs that would attack you in Resident Evil, and they were fast moving, quick acting and stuff. And then he was like, well, if I wanted to have some infected zombie type character stuff, he's like, they should be, move quick aggressively, and that, should just be able to foster so much more innate fear out of that.
Any film that you've got a monster in, you've got to make it work. It's got to be individual. It's got to be, it's got to be different, individual, and it's got to scare people. There's no two ways about it. There's no point making a film that has some monsters in it that are not scary.
Obviously, a massive mark on this film, and from an aesthetic, is the fact that they chose to use Canon XL1 digital cameras at a very early time moving into digital.
This is the way we record our lives. We are surrounded in this city by cameras. They're everywhere, and they're all these DV cameras, or types of them, and they're recording our every motion all the time.
But, you know, like we're in the UK, we're in Britain, and Britain has all these CCTV security cameras on everybody. The way we open this film is a lot of this civil unrest that looks incredibly real.
We decided rightly, I think, that we wouldn't use anything that involved any real deaths, and the footage that is in there that does involve deaths, like the chain, the necklacing, there, it was all mocked up.
The opening of this movie does a great job of really setting the scene for, the rest of the film. We're getting the beginning of the virus here. What's actually going on is they're trying to find a rage suppressor. So the experiments are about. Unfortunately, to do that, they had to create a virus that induces incredible rage. Because as the scientist says,
in order to cure, you must first understand.
So they created this virus and then are kind of reverse engineering it to try to figure out how to suppress rage. Unbeknownst to this fucking PETA group that comes in here and just opens up the cages to let them all out. And I really do feel bad for these monkeys.
Poor chimps. Poor Johnny the chimp. That was our main chimp that we see with the... he's got his brain all wired up there.
We were guided completely into what we were allowed to do and the sizes of the cages and things like that by the guy who looks after the chimps, who breeds them, really, brings them up from birth, really, and keeps them until they're in their 40s.
I mean, this opening scene really showcases this frenetic, chaotic style that Danny Boyle is really playing with. The DV cams are like, because we have higher frame rate, we're getting more information. It feels like the motion is even more exaggerated. He is using so many extreme close-ups too, where we're just in someone's face, in a monkey's face, the banging on the cages, which then is a great juxtaposition to the next scene, which is the introduction of Jim, which is very slow, very quiet, a lot of wide shots to really feel the emptiness of the world.
And a lot of vulnerability. I mean, we get him stark naked, full-on Cillian Murphy naked in a bed. Like, it's a very, like, I think they relate it to being like a birthing scene, so it's just like a very raw, vulnerable state. Hello! There is just this desolate, just empty state that and of course, we're about to explore further into that. The more Cillian gets up, or Jim, our character gets up and explores this world he has now found himself in.
Hello!
A bike courier. Very simple dimple man.
Simple dimple man.
Simple man.
Yeah, as Danny Boyle put it, he wanted anybody, Mr. Anybody.
For the two young leads, if you like, Jim and Selena, we wanted people that weren't really known. We didn't really want stars to be in it, so we kept the budget down so that we wouldn't have to have a movie star in the parts, because we felt that they should be Mr. and Mrs. Anybody.
Cillian's huge now, but Cillian had worked with, I think it was Alex Garland's wife on something previously, and that was how and they wanted like a British guy. They wanted a British accent, and they ended up just Cillian was so great. Obviously, he is Irish descent, but they were like, they tried to get him to put on an accent, and it initially apparently was really not working out. So they're just like, just speak normal, how you do.
Speak normal. You're good. You're fine. That's an easy switch we can make. We are him in this movie. We are in Jim's shoes, which I think it's a great function of this movie, because he goes into this coma before everything happens, comes out after, birthed into this new world. And so we are buckled up in the Jim car the entire time, learning the rules of this world with him, learning the extents of what we have to do to survive in this world.
Might as well get there. We're getting out onto the streets of London. Just like little paperings, little paper moving and stuff. There's just like so many, all these like key indicated ways that they were like, just show distress without making it like over the top.
But basically what we did is we did it very, very simply. We turned up very, very early in the morning. We had a lot of cameras, digital cameras, because we were able to use a lot of them, so that we could capture enough material in 2 minutes of the traffic being held back to create a sequence so that you would feel like the camera's moving around town with him. So there were 3 or 4 shots and the editor could spin them out so that they felt like it was a protracted space he was walking over.
The one that I was curious about is we see a classic look of a red double-decker bus flipped on its side. And so they asked the Westminster City Council if they could do that, and they're like, no, absolutely not. And so they're like, all right, well, we're just going to quietly at 4 a.m. come in and do this ourselves, bring in a flatbed, flip it. Again, quick, like 5 minutes, maybe 20 at the most or something at that time because it was a little more unbeknownst.
What we tried to do is try and find kind of iconic images that, again, did the work of a huge, huge budget, you know?
When you see the whole of Westminster Bridge and the embankment all closed for you and the traffic stop and you can't hear anything, it's pretty exciting.
Even us not being from the UK or from London, we recognize those things and are like, oh my God, Big Ben has never been so lonely over there.
And I know they had talked about and even shot some sequences at the hospital where you start to get some bodies.
Obviously, we made a big choice about whether there were going to be bodies anywhere. And indeed, we did shoot some bodies in this opening sequence. But we decided to follow one of our instincts, which was that we were better, rather than trying to litter the world with corpses, that we were better to kind of try and make it almost symbolic, really, that the emptiness of the place stood for something that had gone wrong rather than specific reality, really, of corpses lying around and blood everywhere or whatever.
But they decided to pull against that, and it was like, no, we want to stay in the psychology of this very empty place, and that eventually will kind of lead to that. And like I said again, with little props and stuff, there was influence from, I'm trying to remember where it was, I think something they had seen in Cambodia of people picking up money from the streets or something in a very war-torn time or something where it's just you weren't really going to be able to use capital in so much of a way. So we see Jim come across all this money and he's just gathering it, wadding it up. And so it's just, you were able to get away, they were able to implement in so many little nuggets that were so easy, but also just genius little ideas of just kind of conveying certain emotional tolls to the parameters that we're now living within.
And what we would do in that situation, we see a pile of cash, oh shit, yeah, I'm gonna pick this up. Taking advantage of, the situation. We don't really know actually what the situation is. Either does Jim. Jim is very confused. And what do some people do when they're very confused and looking for answers? They go to church.
So what we were saying earlier about the bodies in the street, when you decide on that and you clear them all out, then we came up with this idea that we'd put them all, we'd put all the bodies in a church then, which was sort of influenced by stories that we'd heard about, particularly stuff you read about Rwanda and places like that, with corpses ending up in churches and things like that.
This is our first, for Jim, encounter into the real new world that we're in.
All the people lying down, all those corpses that you see in the church are actually volunteers who turned up for us, and I think we gave them a free cup of tea or something.
We get Father coming out.
Father's ready.
Father, what's wrong, Father? You don't look so good.
Great movements from Father to establish kind of the first feel, and to that extent, when they hired their zombies, it was all ballerinas, dancers and stuff, because they wanted people who had very good kind of bodily control and could move very athletically and frantically, especially within the speed.
The man who played the priest was an enormous help to us. He did lots of workshops with us early on about movement. He's a brilliant kind of movement artist, and he was an enormous help in developing the kind of physical movement of the infected, which he starts off there and is a kind of erratic, frenetic, violent, kind of impatient gesture, a bit like the feeling of rage, really.
I think it's a great first encounter of zombie for us to have, of a priest, this holy man, quote unquote, closest to God, being the first zombie that Jim comes across. And even when he realizes that something's wrong with this guy and he almost gets attacked and he hits...
He apologizes profusely.
He feels bad. He's like, I shouldn't have done that.
Oh, I shouldn't have done that.
He's still in the old world. And I think as we go on, we're going to continue to see Jim reminded,
They got to ring him out. They got to ring Jim out. All the old world's got to ring that out.
get all that old stuff out of there and bring you into the new world. And time again, he does fight. He fights against it. He fights against the new world, and maybe brings a little bit of the old world still with him, and maybe to his and others' benefits.
And to your quick point, not to like be long-winded to it, but that is such a like excellent psychology piece to tie in of this guy waking up 28 days later. Everybody else who has survived has already been in this for basically a month. So he keeps being able to be this kind of beacon of a little bit of hope or semblance of, you know, like having some rational thought and approach to things, and not just, again, being so jaded and torn down as Selena is, that we come to meet here shortly.
And that's who we're about to meet, actually. As Jim runs out of the church, chased by a bunch of Zeds, fire, Molotov cocktails come out of nowhere.
I think it's money well spent, and it's the end of our first reel. So you have this extraordinary sequence which starts with London empty and builds eventually to this incredible explosion across it. We used many, many cameras. It's brilliantly cut, I think, by our editor, Chris Gill, who did some wonderful cutting for us on the film to make the best of our limited resources always.
Bring us into the new world with a bang, for sure. As we enter the new world with Selena and Mark, should we get into the meat?
Yeah.
About what we're really talking about this. We're talking about with these zombies. Like I said before, this movie is commenting, throughout the movie on a lot of things between like the government, the military, humanity in general. I think something that they really, really explore continually through this movie, though, is something that I started to kind of bring up, which is adaptability, essentially, is changing and evolving into the situation that you find yourself in, which is what Jim has to do. He is this essentially like space explorer out on his own, coming encounter with things that are completely foreign to him, and he has to learn very quickly how to adapt and survive in this whole new situation that he finds himself in.
We get the opening of like kind of like Mark and Selena, like Mark drops the excellent joke.
There was a different joke at the beginning of it when the guy with the mask came in. Didn't he used to come in and wasn't it Luke said to Darth Vader, "I know what you got for Christmas." Yeah. He says, "Why? I felt your presence."
That's right.
So it's like that one, but it was too short or something.
It's too short, yeah. Better joke, actually.
He's still got a little humor left in him, I guess.
Trying to bring a little levity, see how the response is.
Yeah, and then Selena breaks him the news of what's actually going on.
I've got some bad news.
It started as writing, and right from the beginning you knew this was different. It was a virus, an infection. You didn't need a doctor to tell you that. The day before the TV and radio stopped broadcasting, there were reports of infection in Paris and New York. We didn't hear anything more after that.
Jim can't accept this right now.
Of course there's a government. There's always a government. They're in a bunker or a plane.
The government? There's always a government. They're up in a plane somewhere.
They're in a bunker. Yeah, he just can't. He can't. He's not there yet, obviously.
Yeah, and that's that excellent feeling state again that any of us would be in, of like coming to terms with this. It's like you've already feel like you're in some fucking fever dream walking around. Am I actually still dreaming? I woke up in a hospital. None of this is making sense. Finally find some people to cling to, and then they just drop the truth bomb on you as to like what has actually enveloped, and that's just crashing down on every aspect of your senses internally. And then where are you going to first seek to go is like family.
Where's your family?
They're dead, like Selena's.
Yours will be dead too.
And it's the first moment where this thing about a father figure for him is crucial, that he will not believe that his father, especially, is dead, and that will have to be proved to him. And then through the film he has a whole series of different father figures that he relates to, really, as he searches for himself, I suppose, in some way.
They roll over to his home, and man, it is a stark scene when he goes into his parents' bedroom, and they've obviously taken their own lives and left him a note. His picture, God, it's just the most stark fucking note ever that ends with "Don't wake up."
The prosthetics, those two bodies are prosthetics, which are just dazzling. The prosthetic guys, what they're capable of now is incredible, really. They're very unnerving things to be with when you're in the same room.
I mean, how do you get over that?
Yeah, they wanted to drive the like sentimentality and that emotion home with essentially that, just being like, it's already just like devastating enough, but to actually find like a note, some sort of written communication from your parents, understanding what's happening, knowing that you're in a coma and praying that you basically just die and don't have to come into and experience this and or discover their bodies.
Selena's like, you should be fucking grateful. They went easy. And Jim's like, what the fuck? I'm not grateful. What the hell? And then we got to hear Mark's backstory of when he tried to escape with his family.
Remember, the ground was soft. I looked down and I was standing on all these people. No one could run. All you could do was climb over more people. So I did that. I climbed.
Yeah, because then Mark ends it by saying, she's right. You should be grateful. Like, they did go easy. And yeah, because this is still all news to Jim. All of these, like, everything that they went through, he had no idea that the world got to that point. So people escaping, trying to get to trains and climbing over each other, like, he didn't experience any of that, didn't see any of that.
And we have a very warm, color-toned, like, establishment in the home to begin with, which kind of alludes to that very nostalgic vibes coming back home, the safety, security that you would feel within, all to be stripped away shortly thereafter.
It's interesting how this moment kind of plays out. They've gone to sleep, and he's just wandering around the house, kind of just living in a daydream, living in the memories. He lights a candle. It's a little, like, memorial for his parents, just thinking about having breakfast with them, and then New World literally crashes through the window. It's playing out like it's home movies. But yeah, I think he's just kind of like daydreaming.
And I love how we're like brought to this versus just purely being inside and having just a moment of like glass breaking. We get a quick shot outside and we get to that high shutter speed, that way that they manipulated the digital camera that had a very interesting ability versus how you would shoot that on film or otherwise. But this dude, this big hefty boy comes bowling. He comes rather how would you what was the good Lord, what's wrong with me? The old juice man busting down your
Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid guy
busting down the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And then we get an overhead. Somebody comes through like a skylight out of a window overhead, just drops down very tactically.
Yeah, did they like coordinate that?
We get Mark and Selena hop into it right away to help defend and fight them off.
Jim's in the corner. He ain't doing shit.
Selena's concerned, did you get bit? Did you get bit? Did you get blood in your mouth?
Mr. Bridges.
Were you bitten?
You look over at Mark, and he's got a little bump coming out of his forearm, blood spilling, and you just see that just like help, just like he knows.
And it's an important moment for us as the audience, for Jim as well. Again, we're getting a big old slap in the face reminder of the kind of world that we're living in. And the movie has done a good job at this point of building our sympathy and empathy for Mark, hearing that story. He's also the guy that's joking around a little bit, which unfortunately, when you're joking around in the new world, you get your fucking face hacked in. Selena, played by Naomi Harris, I love her character and the fact that we're left with her and Jim, because she's essentially the antithesis of Jim. She is hardened by the world. She is super cold. And like she said, she'll do anything to survive. She understands how this world works. And multiple times throughout the movie, she's trying to reiterate to Jim that whatever you thought was working in the old world, that's all dead. There's nothing more than just survival. In contrast to Jim, who's kind of just the babe in this world, and like you said, kind of this beacon of how things used to be, and we have them now navigating the world together. You just get two sides of the coin in every situation that we're in, which is just great storytelling.
It might be your brother or your sister or your oldest friend. It makes no difference. And just so you know where you stand, if it happens to you, I'll do it in a heartbeat. Plans are pointless. Staying alive's as good as it gets.
And what is that? What is that up there? Christmas lights? Someone have a Christmas party? Let's go to that building.
Spot an apartment from a distance, little lights out on the railing. We get the rage coming in from below, and then we already get our first taste of Selena just being like, "Deuces, Jim, you're on your own."
This is pretty exhausting. Running up and down these stairs, I think this is the most knackered they ever got. Especially Naomi, who had to carry this battery pack up to power that lamp. There was a kind of 50-pound battery pack in her backpack.
And where we lead to is the completion of our foursome coming together. Brendan Gleeson's character, and I apologize, I don't know the actress's name, plays his daughter Hannah.
Her name is Megan Burns.
Megan Burns, thank you, of course.
This is the first sight of this merciless butcher, who's the wonderful man, Brendan Gleeson, who really wanted it to feel merciless, how he dealt with them. And then when you get to actually meet him, he's the most gentle, amiable man, or appears to be. And is the next father figure, really, that Killian comes to kind of depend on.
And the other aspect of this is that this is kind of considered to be like a celebration scene. It's like two tribes of people who are out there on their own and everything, finding each other, drifters of sorts, and finding each other, and like it's cause for celebration, as Brendan Gleeson says. This was being shot on 9/11, actually, after they heard about the towers being hit, and of course what is unfolding across the pond on our end of things in that day. So they just kind of spoke to what it was as them and everything, having to, like, they're actors, I get it, and everything was like you're dealing with this trauma across the way, unknown reports, things coming through, and you're putting on big smiles, and just being happy, at least in the moment that we've come together, found one another, and how we're gonna essentially try and move forward from here.
Cheers. Cheers.
Well, first of all, they're all trying to kind of return to this kind of normalcy now that they found each other. A little cheers to everybody. Thought we can get into the cook at this time.
Yes, here we go.
Let's cook it up. Yeah, especially with like a Christmas thing, like that is also another trying to attempt to return to normalcy. We have Jim shaving. It's these little things that people are clinging onto desperately to feel like they still have some sort of control over their situation, or even like feeling human. These are basic human things that we take for granted while we're doing them, but suddenly when they're taken away, they feel like such a little luxury. And we'll see also how the extent to which people try to return to normalcy and the extremes that they go to try to return to normalcy as we continue through this film.
Selena has a conversation with Jim, just being like, they need us.
Right, because if they slowed you down...
I'd leave them behind.
In a heartbeat?
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Selena sees the writing on the wall, is just like, they need us, they're going to slow us down. I'm not going to let that happen. I'm not going to wait for them. I'm going to let them die. And Jim's just like, I wouldn't let them just be taken over. It's just like he still has that strong sense of humanity and like what the right thing to do is. He hasn't been jaded down enough, and it's always these moments keep being reminders to Selena again of a little bit of the humanity that she's lost, that she kind of slowly starts to re-find as we continue forward.
I mean, thank you.
And I mean, show.
And yeah, this is when we get the reveal that there is a broadcast.
Answer to infection is here.
Selena immediately has, her reserves against it, and it's just like, how do we know they're alive? How do we know to like trust any of this? And Brendan Gleeson, you can see kind of like a little bit like don't say that. I'm kind of holding on to hope here. It's like, we don't know, but it's like all we can do is like try and find out.
Well, they're also being backed into a corner, all of them, because we have a drought.
You'd never think it. Needing rain so badly. Not in fucking England.
So that's a big motivation for Frank and Hannah to leave, alongside possible cure, possible salvation at a place. And for Frank, he's doing the fatherly thing by trying to protect his kid. He doesn't want to go out and risk him dying and leaving her by herself. So he needs them to back him up.
So right up on the roof before, one little funny behind-the-scenes bit was Garland in the commentary he's talking about. He's like, he was getting a little self-deprecating on himself, saying it was like the worst bit of writing up here on this. He's like, really, as we get to the end, it really descends, just kind of. And we have this bit where Hannah, he's like, it's like bad TV drama.
It isn't true what Dad said. You need us just the same as we need you.
And any of us as artists that do something, we see something that we don't like about like something we did, it's a sore thumb. We're just stuck on it, lament on it for all of time.
The scene has some of the worst, probably the worst in the whole film. And every time I see Megan, who plays Hannah, doing her lines here, I feel a terrific surge of guilt for having given her these impossible lines to say that come straight out of the worst kind of TV drama, really.
Garland, give yourself some slack there, brother, because it was a true triumph. Like so much of this film and your writing is gold that carries it through. So
if you got one or two lines in there, that's pretty damn good. That you don't like, that's a good percentage. And then we're off. We jump into the taxi cab and we are off to hopefully some sort of salvation. And our first stop, we got to go through a merry little tunnel, a stroll through a tunnel. And I got to say, Frank is really whipping this taxi around.
They created a small ramp that kind of like was hidden between the piled up cars and everything. And the editor, Chris Gill, did a tremendous job really playing with a lot of just like different angles they had of the shot, because it was a very quick, short ramp, but it felt like a lot more of a drawn out scene of driving over this continuation of so many vehicles. And then we hit an inevitable flat tire in the worst place that we can possibly get a flat tire, inside a tunnel, desolate, with zombs, at the ready,
running at you. And this starts this pattern that goes on in this movie where every time we have a moment of levity, every time we have a moment of feeling comfortable or safe, like we just went over this pile of cars, everyone's laughing, having a good time, it's immediately followed up with a moment of danger and just a reminder again of where the fuck you are, what world you're in, that you can't have these moments. You can barely have these moments of letting your guard down because something's around the corner. And in this case, it's a horde of zombies.
Well, it starts with rats. We get quick implication of little scattering sounds running, and it was this digital house, effects house Clear, that actually the wide frame shot that we see of the rats kind of imposed some on their excellent work.
We actually did get complaints from a magazine called Rodent and Marsupial Quarterly about the stereotypical portrayal of rats. And they're very friendly creatures, and why do we keep portraying them as horrible things?
But we do have this very tense scene of them changing that tire real quick and speeding off. Hannah really putting in the work at the end there, trying to get the wheel back on. And they zoom off. They zoom off just in time.
We go to a budgeon store, a real store. The manager of this specific, I don't know if it's a franchise specifically, but of this location, was a big fan of films in general and a fan of Train Spotting. So he was very happy and excited to let them come on into his storefront so they get a nice little established shot of it from the outside.
And we filmed through the night in it. And we did this very interesting thing, which is that we didn't light it. It's actually self-lit by overhead neons. And what we decided to do is that the only way that we could do it in the time to get the scene shot was to actually avoid the neon lights as much as possible. And then in shots like that, the digital hosts, we paint them out, the neon lights. So they're actually self-lit by the lights in the supermarket store.
This scene in particular, Alex Garland said that he took inspiration from Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, duh. Yes, this was one of the few sequences, yes, where George Romero had influenced him.
Yeah, because they have that exact same scene where they're just putting like on jewelry and jackets and like the world is our oyster. They can take anything.
And that is a very like a heavily troped usage in so many zombie movies.
This is a very light scene. Everyone's running around, having a good time, getting some alcohol, getting some candies. It's then followed by a scene at the gas station, and Jim has to be reminded of the cruelty, again, of this world. He goes off while they're refilling the gas into the little station. First of all, sees a dead baby on the ground. It's sad. And then does his classic, hello? And then he's got to kill a fucking kid.
We hear very clearly, which they said they were like, it was a little too clear. You weren't really supposed to be able to make it out. But the kid says, "I hate you."
You probably heard him saying, you can hear it probably a bit too clearly there, "I hate you." We put all these this rolling kind of incessant vocabulary of the infected kind of screaming at people like rage, and we put that on them the whole time, and most of the time it's not decipherable really what it is.
And they were like on edge too, like, is killing a kid too much? Like, is this choice like too extreme? But it like, I mean, I don't want to come off as like not having empathy, like that. I don't want to see kids die, but it felt very rooted in the sense of everything else, and almost as if Jim was like really going in there to invite this moment onto himself, that he needed to kind of get over. Like, he hasn't really confronted and had any direct times with zombies yet, or having to take anybody down. He knows nobody's in there. Like, he's not saying hello to actually draw out like a human.
Yeah, his first kill officially is a child, and it's this moment of the death of innocence, and in some way for him, you know, his first kill. You can't take that back, and he's gonna be different from now on.
That's where they stay in the hillside. We also really get, as much as Jim is taking a turn here, he also really is leaning more into Frank as this kind of father figure role. We get Jim into this like dream state, and what is like the thing he's most fearful of outside of course his death is just abandonment, waking up alone again. He wakes up alone, thinks they left him, he's freaking out and everything. Frank ends up like noticing he's in a nightmare state, gingerly kind of wakes him up. You having a nightmare?
Thanks, Dad.
And actually, it's a dad moment. Really, it's Jim having decided now that Frank is his surrogate dad, and he talks to him like he's a kid, and he's the brother of his younger sister Hannah here in a way.
Selena is starting to show signs of changing a little bit, because her and Jim are having a conversation, and she's being a little nostalgic.
You were thinking that you'll never hear another piece of original music ever again.
That's what you were thinking.
No. I was wrong when I said that staying alive is as good as it gets.
We can kind of see how Jim is kind of influencing her a little bit, softening her. She sees Frank and Hannah and see how their reason for living is each other. And she, I think, can kind of now wrap her head around the fact of like, this is why we can go on, just to help each other, and be with people again, not be so cold and closed off.
Yeah, live for today, live for each other.
Yeah. What is it in The Descent? live for the day or whatever.
Oh my gosh. I was just thinking of the song La 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 live for today. But yeah, what is Paul's necklace little
I'll play it.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, yeah, so we leave our safe haven, and again, the pattern of reminding us where we're at. We have to see the entire of Manchester on fire.
Danny Boyle's hometown, he said, what a better place to have burned, Inferno burned down or what have you than your hometown. So we're taking the M1, though, quick little fun tidbit, because the M1 is the busiest roadway of the area, and so they actually used what they called like a slow police blockade, or like a rolling blockade.
We were unbelievably fortunate that we contacted these police men, and they were very keen to help us do it, and they created what they call a rolling block in both directions, where they drive in front of traffic coming in both directions very slowly and create this kind of corridor, this diminishing corridor, where there appears to be no traffic. It's just being held back by them, driving at 10 miles an hour.
I think they only gave us 2 or 3 goes at it, so you don't have very much time, and so you're just under a great deal of pressure to kind of get this right.
There was like windows where you have 3 or 4 minutes to get the shot where the traffic's held down the road. So it was brilliant, but it was a weird experience again to see a motorway of that size just empty.
A lot of these government agencies or otherwise working well with them under a tight budget to not have to have the big budget means of what that would take.
And we're at the military outpost that seems empty. Where the fuck is everybody?
This was they used this to test brakes and tires a lot. This stretch of road, this area, and I think who was it? Jeremy Clarkson. I don't know if it was Top Gear, or other shows he may have had and stuff. They would utilize filming there and stuff specifically too. So fun little tidbit just for that coming into this basically the blockade and the military outpost that they were hopeful to find. They have found.
They found it, but no one's there, unfortunately.
Frank's not all too happy about that either.
Pretty pissed.
We have to go.
Yeah.
Go fucking where?
You're already alluding to when he leaves, the safeness of being close to them from the outskirts, that he's going more in on his own. It's oh fuck, it's everything's quiet. We know nobody's here, but what's about to happen? But instead of just having a zombie just bust out and come out onto Frank there, exactly what you're saying, your own demise coming through a moment of an emotional reaction that is very normal to have, but not having governance on it yourself, and then being frustrated by it and kind of taking a little bit of that energy out. You're just kind of is he kick or hits the fence, or he's standing there, and we see the panned up, we see a body impaled basically up above in this crow, and then we just track down this excellent shot. We see through the blood coming down into Brendan Gleeson's face and just right into the eye.
This death as well, this came quite late in the day, because for a long time it was dogs. But dogs really screwed around with a few things. One was that they were very expensive to use, but also if they were infected dogs, then everything, all animals would be infected, whereas one of the many rules that we ignored was that it was primates.
It is such a deflating feeling moment where you're just no, not fucking Frank.
He knows, we know. Oh, God.
He immediately turns to Hannah, apologizes, tells her he loves her. It's gut-wrenching. It's just fucking awful. And we get some great... Gleason's got some great fucking visceral physicality, some great movements.
He could be a fucking dangerous zombie.
Yeah, he's really throwing those bows. It's kind of reminds me of a little Chris Farley down by the river. Those big boys get those arms moving, those torsos twisting, baby.
And right when Jim is about to have to do it, bang, bang, bang. Oh, look who's just in time. Fucking military boys coming out of the woods in their little ghillie suits. Hanging back, waiting for what? I don't know. And they take Frank out. Sad. I mean, necessary, but fucking sad. So you guys were here the whole time? What the fuck? What were you waiting for?
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are the ones who sent out the broadcast.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a little theory about them. I feel like they were waiting for, because they see 4 people come up, 2 guys, 2 women. And what we come to learn is they're really interested in the women.
It was a very advantageous moment for them.
Yeah, it's almost like they wanted something like that to happen.
Exactly. I mean, it feels very much so all right, let's let this play out for a second. Frank's easily our main like concern, and like clearly seemingly a father figure to the young girl. And all right, we'll deal with, naturally we can take him out. Good, he got infected, and now we just have Jim, and the two women. And yeah, we keep getting reports. 2 females.
1 male, 2 female. I repeat, 1 male, 2 female.
And we're off to our military mansion. Should we get into the thrill?
Yeah.
As we approach our
barracks. Yeah, and we kind of segue slightly from survival horror into psychological.
It starts becoming a different movie now. And I think that this is part of the brilliance of this movie is we are also now going to start to question who is the actual monster of the movie. Up until this point, the threats have been the Zeds out there. But as we get pulled into Sanctuary and start to actually realize how this place is being run by this very militaristic, I don't know, very God complex kind of guy, we realize, oh shit, maybe the monsters are actually in here.
I play a character called Major Henry West, who's a senior officer in the British Army. He and his 8 soldiers are uninfected. But basically what he's done is he's taken over a stately pile, a mansion, and he's made it impregnable. He represents the head and Jim represents the heart.
And this is the next father figure, really, for Killian to put his faith in, really. And this is a much more authoritarian.
That's Eccleston ruffling his hair, which is just picking up. I mean, that's just him doing that. And, but it really reinforces the father thing.
But Jim was leaning into it. I mean, Jim needed that kind of nurturing in that moment. He
just lost his pseudo-dad, so he's looking for some sort of comfort. Are you going to be...
This is Dad 3.
This is Dad number 3, and Dad 3, not a good dad.
You're getting worse. I wouldn't say every time. I mean, your first dad's your original father is going to be the best. Frank's a good secondary, but we're quickly on a slippery slope.
Commander, bad
it's
dad.
Like there's more times you get married.
Yeah, yikes. And what the commander says is secondary to safety. What's really important here is rebuilding.
Secondary to protection, our real job is to rebuild.
And he's kind of set up his own little world of himself. You know, he's got his military boys. One of the military boys is in the kitchen, kind of the faux like female figure. Yeah, and he's very much the man of the house, head of the table when they're eating dinner.
And that was to your extent of bringing up Apocalypse Now, I think that scene was inspired from a very like surrealistic like dinner sequence from Apocalypse Now that they took and kind of ran with. That feels so... I don't even know what descriptive term to put it on, but it is a very like weirdly unsettling and what should be like a kind of comforting scene. And again, trying to establish some sort of like societal norms again around dining in and around together.
It's very like we walked onto the Lord of the Flies island. A lot of boy running around, aimless energy, you know, and like trying to establish society, but it's not. It feels very dangerous. It feels very loose. Any moment, something could crack.
Now we saw Mailer before too, right? Because that's before
yes, that's
dinner.
what I was gonna get to next. Is on top of him trying to set up his old world again, he's also running his little experiments on the side. They've got Mailer chained up in the back. Again, he's setting up this very like faux nuclear family picture that we have going on, where we have like. He's the father. He's got his wife in the kitchen. They've got their kids running around the mansion, and now they have their dog chained up in the back.
And eventually he'll tell me how long the infected take to starve to death.
We're now starting to have sympathy for the monster, or who we thought was the monster the whole movie. And now we're revealing a different kind of monster in Commander Daddy.
Commander Daddy.
And because he's human, he's almost a little bit scarier than the zombies.
Well, yeah, I mean, at least with the zombies, it's very straightforward. It is very black and white, like what we know. Their principle is rage, and they just want to spread it and inflict anger onto anything around them. As I think Danny Boyle said before with like rage, it was like it's like road rage times 1,000,000, or maybe 1,000, either way, a high denomination. That's what we are feeling and going through. So again, like these are not undead zombies, humans are re-rising and stuff. These are just like very upset, frazzled people. They're also sending out a signal and message to draw people in. So it's this like siren song being brought to what should feel like safe haven and protection and stuff, but really is just like their own desires. I mean, desires, but it's like their own plan, their own like the plot that they have ready to move forward with, which is keeping society alive, rebuilding. And what do you need for that? Well, you got to have some sort of female component to the male counterpart.
I promised them women.
I promised them women.
Yeah, sorry.
I promised them women.
Big mistake, I know, but it's cat's out of the bag.
They were going to revolt. They were going to kill themselves. I had to give them something. And so I promised that we would find them women. And again, we have another example of like people desperately trying to hold on to normalcy and trying to hold on to the old world. And he's able to manipulate these soldiers by promising them something that was so normal in the old world.
And also, do we think that they actually, like the commanders really thinking that they're going to find anybody in the amount of time it had already been? And that being said, if anybody, it would be a female.
To me, honestly, I don't think he cared about having women there. I think he was just trying to keep his dudes with him. And like
exactly, he had to tell what he probably felt was a little bit of a lie, or told, but now that he's in it and stuff, he's like, all right, well, and he's too much of a pussy. Like he never does any of the admirable right things.
Slow down.
Major Henry West. Let's start calling him Major. Sorry, for this whole time we've been calling him Commander. I know that's got to be like, if I was like that deeply like attached to a film, I don't mean to like no knock on 20 Days because it's tremendous, but I would be like cursing to the screen every time it has been called wrong. So we get it right, Major West.
So Major Daddy wants Jim to be one of the cool dudes and be part of this whole like gangbang that they're about to do. But Jim's like, I ain't doing that. Tries to get Han and Selena out of there and is immediately stopped.
Starting the world again when the rest of the fucking world hasn't even stopped. What would you do with a diseased little island? They quarantined us.
Is that we set out, really, when we started it, to say it was a worldwide contagion. And in fact, we were going to shoot some scenes at one point of infection getting on a plane to America and things like that. And so it was spreading worldwide across seas and oceans. And then, as we worked on the film, we decided to actually make it that Britain itself would be quarantined, and it gave hope that there might be some way out of this.
And they're going to take him out, and the other morally right soldier, they're going to shoot them.
Another of our conscious references, they've been Rwanda and
Bosnia.
China,
this was
Bosnia.
This is a lot of the photographs that came out of Bosnia, and was especially the kind of grave area that they're taking them to.
And we get a classic moment of like a two villainous thing where they start bickering and arguing in some way that leads to like a distraction moment.
Jim escapes actually by using the dead bodies. He hides among the dead bodies to escape them. And great start for this last part for Jim, because this is when Jim is going to get as close as he ever has to being a zombie. And so for him to start in the grave at this moment is kind of, I don't know, it's a good visual moment of like, okay, Jim is about to turn a little crazy right now.
Yeah, and I mean, to this point, this is like, he's been devolved now, and what we talk about, like him, and there was this great, again, kind of like dual moment that we get to slightly hereafter and stuff, where Danny was talking about wanting the audience or the feeling to be a little bit like Jim was potentially infected or of that. But it's like he does have rage, but it's like this vengeance rage. We get our Major Daddy starting to lose a little bit of his sense of security and stuff, that everything's starting to unfold. He finds one of his soldiers dead. He's coming across some zombies. He's getting real worked up. Comes back storming Normandy to the house.
Yeah, meanwhile, the soldiers are getting the ladies in their dresses and being very gross and like violently tearing off Selena's clothes. How she gets the soldiers out of the room is she actually kisses one of the soldiers.
It's just polite.
Again, we're using like ways of like the old world to then manipulate people in this world. The kiss, I think, is first reminding him of like, oh my God, like the kiss of a woman. Wow. And then this politeness aspect is actually what gets him to them to leave. Again, he's just kind of like, it's like a moment of being like, oh yeah, I am a human being.
The scene, of course, once you get over that initial impact, is actually about
empowerment.
Yeah, and her empowerment, really. And her controlling the scene and winning the scene, really, in a way, and protecting the girl and herself, ultimately.
And Jim unleashes hell there, the quickest, easiest way, too, by, flipping the script on them. They have Mailer there chained up in the yard, shoots the chain, frees Mailer. Mailer's ready to come busting on into the house.
Mailer's almost have like a look of like, thank you. Yeah. Jim also running through the house too, trying to find Selena. We finally find her with one of the more deplorable dudes.
For Selena, what she's seeing is an infected guy that in all his movements and actions, he's indistinguishable from their enemy.
So this looks horrible. That is Ricky on the floor there, doing a brilliant job of allowing his eyes to be pushed down into their sockets. And it's
method acting.
It's just
go for it.
And again, one of the things that if you listen to it without sound, if you watch it without sound, it's okay really. But you can it's the sound that makes it so unbearable in a way.
Ow, that looked rough. And so much so where Selena thinks that he is a zombie, but because just enough of Jim has kind of seeped into her at this point, she holds it. She holds it for her just enough to realize that Jim is actually not infected. Drops it. Big makeout scene, even though he's covered with blood. Really gross.
They kept telling Killian to draw his hands down or don't have his thumbs up on her face because they're like, you just had impaled basically in the brain and usually keep your hands down, but they just couldn't. The passion was too high. We get out, think we're safe haven. Hannah's driving Dad's taxi, and who's there? Major Daddy's sitting in the back. Excellent sequence of her whipping around and then backing Major Daddy West into a tight corridor where, of course, his full circle moment coming around, Mailer's there, busts through the glass, pulls him out.
They're going towards the gate, and Hannah's like, it's locked. Just go. And they hit it, and it's a freeze frame of them lurching forward. I mean, in my mind, the movie could have just ended there because it goes towards this pattern that the movie has established of like happy things being cut short by the reality. And in this reality, it's like they escape, but it could have just ended with them being killed in a car accident.
It's also the thing that led to a lot of these multiple endings because Jim has been shot, and that was the key point. It was what happens from that moment, in a way.
Yeah.
But we do still continue after that. We see that Selena, oh my God, saved Jim.
And then we get another 28 days later.
Which leads us to, should we get to the final ride of this film? Because we're there. Nice. We're in the epilogue right now.
Yeah, we're
flying in, literally.
Coming in hot.
Jim wakes up again. And this time we're at a beautiful, beautiful little cottage.
15th century cottage at that.
What a good find, Jim and Selena and Hannah.
And we're on 35 millimeter film. We're out of digital at this point. Very beautiful, smooth looking frames.
Plane comes over the ridge and hello. Jim's word of the movie. Hello. Another just human greeting that is so simple, but when it's gone, it's really gone, and you can feel it. But this wasn't the original ending.
This was not.
This was after test audiences didn't like the original one.
Bleak ending.
Where Jim just fucking dies. There's actually 3 alt endings that we have, and every single one of them, Jim is dead. I got them written down here. Now, they did shoot 2 of the alternate endings that they didn't use. One of them being that hospital scene, Selena attempting to save his life, doesn't do it. He essentially dies on the operating table, and it ends with Selena and Hannah walking out into the world to an unknown fate. That one, there's a little hope there. I can see the little hope.
And at least we've had Selena really come around as a motherly figure guarding over Hannah in the last final act at the mansion and everything. Before, she was a lot more like pressed off and didn't really care. So it's like, even though they were pretty, like they hadn't had much of any moments directly together, anything to really tether them yet outside of just both being female.
There was actually this great moment, I forgot to bring it up, after Frank is killed. Jim goes to support Selena. He's like, how's Hannah? And she's like, how do you think she is? Like, your father just fucking died. And Jim's like, she'll cope just like I did, just like you did.
I don't want her to have to fucking cope. I want her to be okay.
She's now taking on, like you said, that maternal figure of protecting her from the world. So yeah, totally. We get there with that character. The other ending, the other alt ending that was also shot, also ends with Jim dying, I think, on the table. And in that ending, he's kind of reliving the accident, the bike accident that caused him to go into the coma in the first place.
I think that could have been a pretty cool ending. And not saying that I wanted it full-heartedly, but to kind of fuck with you from a like psychological standpoint, and especially Jim's character, to be like, at that point he's suffering and going through something. If you've ever been in like a hospital or going through some serious kind of like medical moment of like uncertainty with what your body's going through, and it's like, I could die. It's like where your brain goes is a very strange place. And I just like kind of, that really makes me think and relate to him in that moment, almost being like, did I dream this whole sequence of everything else? And I'm just right back, like remembering actually what happened, this accident. I'm in the trauma from that, and I'm about to die. And he doesn't get to really have a rhyme or reason or understanding of what makes sense in his end, which is like very tragic and feels like very like, what was this all for and about? And maybe that, you know, again, the bleakness of that and stuff is just like, you lose so much. And what we've gone through.
It does kind of ask a question of like, well, what was the point of all that if it was possibly not real, possibly a delusion? And then the third alt ending, which only made it to storyboards, was not shot. I'm just going to actually read it. Instead of Frank being killed by the soldiers after being infected, the other survivors tie him up and discover a research laboratory at the blockade where Jim undergoes full blood transfusion in order to save Frank at the cost of his own life. So again, Jim does die. He has that sacrifice, but he saves Frank in that ending.
And that was what, in like when they originally had written it into what that moment I was talking about before with Selena, where he's talking about Frank and Hannah and that he would do something, basically, you know, sacrifice or do something for them that isn't just thinking of himself and moving forward. And for him to make that like full move, full blood transfusion, draw his out to fill into Frank. Would they give Frank's blood? No, he just dies because he's just let out of blood. I mean, I don't like, right? It's just,
yeah. Ultimately, they said it was a little too far-fetched.
I know a lot of people think you change things because of the influence of Hollywood or America on movies generally, and hopeful endings, happy endings, all that kind of stuff. But actually, the truth of it was that I think we all felt when we watched the film with an audience with our bleak ending on it, that the film was such a grueling experience to get through that it felt like you had a responsibility, especially on a journey film, which this particularly is. You felt like you had a responsibility to kind of end with at least a note that the journey might continue in some way, that these people could go on in some way.
And there we are with, again, a little bit of a gleam of hope at the very end, which does feel really like refreshing and nice. It's like taking a shower when you haven't in a long time, been out in the woods or something for the weekends. There was something, again, we're back into 35 millimeter film. We're not looking all grainy and just the pose, and like we have this old homey cottage right on a lakefront. Everything is quiet and serene. And it is a nice beat to kind of be able to tie into and end on.
28 days later.
28 days later.
Wow, we did it. We made it through. All right, let's get to these Smash Pumpkins for the last time in season 5. How you feeling? 28 days later.
28 days later. Yeah, this ride, this going back through again, throwing some real deep found love and appreciation, and so much for the script, the characters, the acting that really tied and tethered things along. I landed a 4.2.
4.2.
420, baby.
420. Highly rated. Very nice. I think it's got to be one of my favorite zombie movies overall. And as far as like horror movies goes, it's got to also be very high up there on just like my list of favorite horror movies. It's scary. It's effective. It's commenting on things. It's pretty much everything I try to ask for in a movie. I think I'm going to go a little bit higher and say 4.8. Very, very close to a 5. I might have, I don't know. I'm just saying 4.8. I'm settling on 4.8, but really love this movie. Really glad we could dive into it together and revisit it together for the podcast. And I think we ended it on a pretty good one.
Hell yeah, we definitely did.
Nice. Well, thank you all so much for joining us in season 5.
Beautiful people, thank you so good. Very kindly, we appreciate you to the highest. You understand? To the highest regards, we have utmost appreciation, admiration, and love for you all joining us here every other Thursday through this stretch of time. And we can't wait to share with you what we got cooking coming up.
Exactly. Keep on the lookout for what we got next for next season, or for the adventures of Matt and Sam, and just keep looking out for more content coming your way. Please make sure you like, subscribe, turn on those notifications.
Comment away, bid your farewells to season 5, and welcome on season 6, The Adventures Between. And as always, don't forget to check out Playground Social, the tremendous Playground Social 2.0 studios we are housed within, that has given you all these delightful different looks throughout this season. Excited for more to come from there. Thank you to the big tank, Rudy Schieder.
Thank you, Rudy.
Thank you to the big hoss, Andrew Degner.
Thank you, Degner.
And thank you to the mighty one, Michael Sinas.
Thank you, Mr. Sinas.
We love you boys dearly, and to you at home,
we love you as well. Don't forget to check us out at BP Pritchie T if you want to find me.
I'm at MR_Andreessen.
And until next season,
y'all stay spooky.
Y'all stay spooky. Y'all stay spooky.